Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Under Color of Law take on Trump and his tariffs. So much of the news is about the tremendous damage it's having on our economy. Prices are going to go up, supply chains being damaged. It's all about the domestic effect. Politically, that's important, but it has a global effect, which also is politically important. So, as is being reported by a lot of international news, there are big projections of the damage this is doing and will do. So the World Trade Organization, the WTO, previously expected global goods trade to expand by 2.7% in 2025, but now it forecasts it's going to fall by 0.2%. Their chief economist said, tariffs are a policy lever with wide-ranging and often unintended consequences. They are running simulations, and it's indicating that there's a big downward turn of world economic activity. Relatedly, the UN Trade and Development Body, UNCTAD, released its own growth report, which is also forecasting global growth to slow to 2.3% in 2025 due to escalating trade tensions and uncertainty, again, due to tariffs. And actually, that kind of projection could be widely viewed as signaling a global recession. So we're not just talking domestic, but global recession. Now, the uncertainty, of course, there's just been this flurry of his announcements on tariffs, right? They're up, they're down, they're still talking, even though in the Chinese case, it doesn't seem like they're talking at all. He's just saying that they're talking, maybe lying about it. And the big problem here is the whole concept does not fit with what Trump says he's doing. It also doesn't fit with what you'll hear a lot about on media trying to be even-handed, which is they talk about Trump's policy goals or his administration's goals, what they're trying to do with tariffs. And if you take a look at that, even a superficial dive into it, you'll see that that just does not fit. It's a complete disconnect. Now, caveat, I'm not an economist. In fact, I was originally accepted into a joint degree program for international affairs and law, which I was very excited about. My mom was very excited about it. She thought I'd be a diplomat, with a lawyer background. So I did first year in all law school. Second year went to the School of Foreign Service, which turned out to be, this is a side story sometime, heavy on the quantitative economics. Like way too heavy for me because I was an English major and never taken economics. So I quit the School of Foreign Service after 1 year. And I went back, as a friend of mine said, to the promised land for me, which was just law school. So I'm no economist. But I have a smattering of understanding of the history of it. And I feel that mainstream media really isn't giving us enough of that background to fully understand how incompatible Trump's policies are with anything that is historically meaningful in terms of the context. Now, I say that, and again, want to point out that we need to promote more independent voices. Again, not saying don't pay attention to legacy media. They have great reporting, very solid institutions. But subscribe to us and support other independent media because we're bringing a real diversity of voices which aren't beholden to the corporate overlords and don't have to daily judge the question of what are they going to say if we take this opinion. So make sure you subscribe to us because we want to be on this journey with you. Make us the #1 and only legal analysis network. And we're also, of course, talking about politics and global trade, like tonight. So here's Trump's supposed policy that the media is always saying, oh, this is what they're trying to do, right? He's supposedly trying to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. And they'll say that's complicated. It's a long game. Look, it's not a long game. It's certainly a game. It's a game of garbage. There's no way manufacturing is coming back to the United States. Manufacturing really was here, right? The car industry, for example, this gave a ticket for United States growth. It created the solid middle class in the United States. That day is gone. And not because the industries are dying. It's because the industries have expanded into global industries where parts are made here, parts are made there, they come together. They support American industries that way. That's the way the world is now. This idea that he's going to take us back to some imagined golden age is nonsense because just on the simple basis of time, right? First of all, there's been no investment in bringing back manufacturing, despite all this talk. It takes years just to build a new plant, after which it's going to take more years to begin to see any change in the economy. So this is just nonsense. I mean, it would take 25 more years to try and turn that around, and economically it can't be done. Why? You can tell a little bit by looking into what is the history of tariffs and the trade in the world. Originally, the tariff system, I mean, there have been tariffs in history, but you got to go back to 1937, 1945, the so-called Breton Woods agreements. What that was during and immediately after the Second World War, the US, United Kingdom, other allied nations got together in a bunch of negotiations to try and establish a stable post-war international economy. They created the International Monetary Fund, later the World Bank was created, all at this Breton Woods conference, as well as the signing of GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, in 1947. Now, GATT was an agreement that's foundational in terms of its structure on how the countries work together to manage tariffs, quotas, and other barriers to trade. And it started off with 23 nations signing on to this in 1947. It eventually morphed into what is today the World Trade Organization. But prior to this GATT agreement, trade barriers had been raised during the Great Depression with a lot of countries of tariffs of over 40% in the 30s. A lot of harmful effects here. Some people say that the big tariff push right before the Great Depression caused it. Probably didn't cause it by itself, but it was a factor which certainly didn't help. So these countries were very aware of the damage that an out-of-control tariff system can do and wanted to bring stability to it. So it was expected that GATT was only going to be provisional. It was the only major agreement governing international trade until the creation of the WTO, like decades later. During that time, that organization evolved into basically a stable and balanced system in the world of trade. So when they did put together the WTO, it incorporated a lot of the work and the principles that GATT had done. And one of the purposes of it is to ease any trade imbalances where you don't want the small nation being bullied or put their thumb on by the large nation, and to promote really global stability and wealth for all the people. Now, what's Trump's view of this? Well, he has already threatened to withdraw from the WTO, right? Take a look at some of the basic headlines here. Now, despite his threats about that, he's yet to formally exit the World Trade Organization, WTO. He has repeatedly threatened to do so. He expressed dissatisfaction with them. When Trump talks about that, he's always like, we're getting a bad deal. It's like he doesn't even understand what the deal is. He doesn't even understand that his entire life has been based on the principles that GATT put forth. He says, I think in a 2018 interview with Fox, Trump said, quote, "If they don't improve, I'll pull out of the WTO." As usual, he doesn't even know what he means by improve. What does that actually mean? He later reiterated that, saying that it was an organization created, this is an interesting quote, created to benefit everyone except us, unquote. Again, fundamental misunderstanding. It has benefited us a hell of a lot. So he does not understand that, or maybe there's something else to what's going on. Take a look at some of the international coverage here, put that up for you, and they are reporting, for example, that U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's trade policy challenges the post-World War global trading system because he's rejecting the WTO's organizations of their principles of non-discrimination and reciprocity. Remember, this one is President-elect, they're reporting on this. He proposes a power-based approach that would fundamentally alter international economic relations, risking the predictability and fairness that have underpinned global trade for 7 decades. Why do I say that this whole notion of the policy behind the tariffs is completely adverse to what Trump really wants? So number one, right, he does not really grasp what the global trade system is, obviously. Number two, he's not interested in promoting a global trade system. What he's interested in doing, it seems like, as always, is just to promote himself, to have the image of I'm a strong man, I can control these things. I don't need to be beholden, meaning negotiate or honor anyone else. Who else is like that? Obviously, Putin, dictatorships, China to a large extent, those are authoritarian systems when you look at it. And that's what he aspires to do. Those systems, for a long time, can afford to be rogues, so to speak. Impose conditions on smaller, less powerful nations that only benefit the greater nation. However, when they go up against the world eventually, that doesn't work long term. They can starve their people, literally, because they can create news blackouts. The people can't do anything to them. So they can afford to cause damage in international relations and horrific domestic damage to themselves because it's an authoritarian regime. They'll suppress the dissent. That's what Trump aspires to because he does not understand the system and he doesn't really care, right? He only wants to promote himself, what makes him feel good. That's why it is nonsense when you hear them talking about they have a policy goal, it's a long game, it's nonsense. There is no long game. There will never be a return to the manufacturing of the 1950s and 60s. That's nonsense. They want to do that. It's just a bunch of BS. All that he's trying to promote, his only long game, his only middle game, his only short game, is to make himself feel good. That's what's really going on. So we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll talk more about the way these domestic things affect the whole world, which therefore affects us. All right, talk to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.